Callie Fin, happy WNBA Monday. It is good news for the Indiana Fever as they clinched a playoff berth yesterday. However, Callie, we recently learned not too long ago that Caitlin Clark will not be returning this season. So that playoff push will be without Caitlin Clark. And I think this was expected by many. You know, she posted the news herself, and I like that. I like that they gave her the opportunity to do this. I won't read this entire thing, but it is long. But I thought it was like an awful. I thought it was a thoughtful update, and she says she hoped to share a better update. She won't be returning to play this season. She wants to thank everyone who had her back through all the uncertainty, and that it's been incredibly frustrating for her. But she knows that there's good, and the Fever brought her so much joy and important perspective. So she's proud of the team. She thinks they've only gotten stronger through adversity this year, and now it's time to close out the season and claim their spot in the playoffs, which they did. They did that yesterday, and it's 2 years in a row now for the Indiana Fever, and they will be heading to the postseason, which is great after like a large playoff drought. Obviously not last year. We know they made it, but I think the amount of injury adversity this team faced this year, to make it back there with Caitlin Clark missing so many games is remarkable. Were you surprised about the Caitlin news, Callie?
Absolutely not. I mean, she's played in 13 games this season. The last time we saw her was in July. It's September. So I think that, you know, when that news dropped a few days ago, I thought, okay, finally, that they've announced that. I think even just watching, like as a working beat reporter and seeing the beat reporters that work on the Indiana Fever beat kind of consistently have to follow up and say, like, oh, you know, is she going to take the court in practice? Is she going to do this? Like, it was just a really long, drawn out process. And again, I understand why we talk about the Caitlin Clark effect and all of these things. You know, there are reasons to try to hold out hope that maybe she could take the court again. And I think that, I mean, even things off the court, like she's got her signature shoe rollout happening. All these things would they would be much better if she was active, you know, and playing. Sometimes things just can't work like that. I think from the start of this season, you know, there were signs that this wasn't going to be like a fully healthy campaign. And it sucks that she was so limited. I don't think I imagined that she would be like, if you would have asked me at the start of this season, would she have only played 13 games? I would have said, there's no way, you know what I mean? But I mean, there were signs. There was the groin, there was the hamstring, the ankle, all these different things. And so at a certain point, I think it makes sense to just rule out your superstar. And they talk about it being this like big picture move. And you kind of alluded to it, but that's really, I think, what I'd be looking to if I'm the Fever is the big picture. You know, you mentioned they clinched one of the last two playoff spots, and it was in a convincing fashion, you know, against the Mystics. And to be specific, you mentioned a long playoff drought. It was a 7-year playoff drought before last season. And Caitlin Clark was obviously, you know, the driving factor for that to turn around. So it's like now they have proven to themselves that, like, even, you know, no matter who's on the court, because this is, if you count Caitlin, that's 5 season-ending injuries for this team. I mean, that is absurd. And they've snagged consecutive playoff berths for the first time since like 2016. So this is like a new era that the Fever are rolling into. And I think if I'm like a big picture analyst, I'm going, hey, this is actually really positive. You know, like we persevered through a whole bunch of injuries, and here we are doing something that has not been done in almost 10 years of this franchise's history.
For sure. Look, they said they are prioritizing her long-term health, and I think that is the correct call. Tarika and I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, and we both were of the mindset, like, we can see the pros and cons to Caitlin returning, but like, this is the asset. You preserve the asset. And so, yeah, their long-term viewpoint makes a lot of sense. You know, her health and wellness is the most important thing, Callie. And, you know, even if she came back, like, how would she be able to get into regular season basketball shape, much more playoff basketball shape, which is a whole other level? I mean, to me, it just wouldn't be a good predicament to put her in. So, you go out with the team you have, you fight as hard as you can, and I think just making the postseason alone is a success. I know they had bigger aspirations, but this is a successful season, all things considering. And you know what? All of these rookies, we've seen Paige take a lot of time off, not time off, like need to be like, whether she was injured or, Cameron Brink last year got injured with an ACL injury. These rookies come straight from the draft and start playing. And that's what Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all the other rookies went through last year. And her time is in such demand because she's Caitlin Clark. And so, sometimes like when we don't take the rest that we need, the universe, God, whatever your belief system is, will force you to do it. And so I think that this is only setting them up for like something extraordinary next year. And I know it sucks. No competitor wants to be off the court, but this is in the best interest of Caitlin and long-term for her and for the Fever. So I do think it's the right decision, and just, wishing her well and looking to see her back on the court next season. But as we did mention, the Fever, they clinched a playoff berth, and that's exciting for them because my goodness, they are a very depleted team. Like, yes, they still have the services of Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell, and they led the way. But I love this graphic, Callie, because it shows you all of the players that have played at some point this season on the Fever. I want people to be clear because this is not the normal size of a WNBA roster. Okay, but this is how many players, hardship contracts, people they've had to bring in because they've had so many injuries to starters, to key players, to rotation players, to players that really matter for their team. And then even when they brought in hardships, some of those hardships got, injured. So this is huge that they made the playoffs. I'm so happy for them. They have to still figure out some seeding, but they could be 6 or 7. But yeah.
It's funny when you mentioned the sheer amounts of personnel on that graphic. I started counting. I got to 17, which is actually crazy considering that the standard size of a WNBA roster is 12. That is the league maximum. But you're right. It's been a journey for them, and they've like the personnel coming in and out. It's been something that I don't know if I've seen recently watching the WNBA, but I do think, where it comes down to now, looking at their playoff outlook, is that there's one spot left, and it's like, okay, who's that spot going to go to? And then what's this like picture going to look like? Even like, it's like a really tight situation from the top and then like to the bottom. I guess that maybe, even if, just from top to bottom, literally, it's like this could end up any way. You look at, obviously the Lynx are settled in number 1, but the rest is confusing.
Well, the Fever can only be 6 or 7. And so they can't fall below 7. So 8 is going to be either Seattle or the Sparks, but 6 or 7. But the Fever need help. Like, even if they win their final game, they need the Valks to lose. They have to finish with a better record than the Valkyries because the Valkyries own a tiebreaker over them. So they're likely going to end up at 7. But the Valkyries, I shouldn't even say that because the Valkyries' remaining schedule is tough. They have the Phoenix Mercury, and they also have the Lynx. And so, so the Mercury may rest players, but it doesn't seem like the Lynx really are going to do any big rest. So we'll see. But they will end up in 6 and 7, and so they will either be playing the Aces or the Dream, who are most likely to be 2 or 3. We just don't know which one yet. So 2 and 3. Going to go down to, it seems, the last day of the season. 6 and 7, going to likely also go down to the last day of the season. So that's what it is. But congratulations to the Indiana Fever on your playoff berth. Good stuff. Great story. And Callie, thank you so much for joining me today. Guys, make sure you tune in to the WNBA on NBC. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you do not miss out.